Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. Today I'm starting a new series about body-specific pattern adjustments that you can make before you even start doing muslin fitting. So no matter what style or process of pants fitting you're going to give a go at, if you know you have certain things that you always have to change, or if you look in the mirror and you realize that you can see certain different body curves or different things that you know you need to adjust for, we're going to deal with some of those before we work with preparing our pattern to create a muslin. So today I'm starting out with a subscriber question about a tilted waist. Your waist can tilt forward, making your front rise shorter and your back rise longer, or it could go in the opposite direction. That's less common, but you could also have a longer rise in the front and a shorter rise in the back if your waist tips backwards. And sometimes I think it's easier to deal with that kind of issue before you even start working in muslin. So let's take a look. I've already adjusted two legs for a forward tilting waistline, and then I'm going to show you how to do it, and I'm going to show you how to do it if it's tilting forward or backward, just so I'm making sure I'm helping everybody who has a tilted waist. And this was a subscriber question, so I know at least one person is looking for this information. And I also want you to know tomorrow, I normally announce what I'm doing later in the week at the end, but tomorrow I'm going to be doing an action-packed subscriber Q&A about raglan sleeve tops. I got a few different questions. How do you get it to not pull to the back? How do you do a full bust adjustment? And I think there was even one more. So I will be tackling those tomorrow during subscriber Q&A live at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So let's take a look here. You can see what I did, and I kind of tried to color code it. First, I drew a line across the pieces at full hip level, and what I did was I slashed to remove or to create two pieces, and then I tilted the front down to make the front rise shorter, and I opened up the back to make the back rise longer. And that would get you going in the right direction if you have a waistline that tips forward. You'll notice here I did another thing to the back leg. After I adjusted for the tilted waist, I also reestablished a little bit of the grain line. And I just want to mention this now before we get going. You may or may not have to do that part. If you have a tilted waist and you also have a flat butt or a shape that doesn't need a lot of extra room inside between your back leg pieces and your body, then you can straighten out the center back edge afterward to just get rid of some of that, because you can see what happened to my grain line. It actually got closer to center back, and my grain line and my center back seam got very angled. So if you don't have a prominent behind, you don't need that room that a more angled center back seam makes. So what I'm going to do here is show you how to do this adjustment in a really easy way. And as I'm walking through it, I'm going to make sure I show you how you can do it for forward or backward tilted waistlines. And then I think you can see here, if you already do this to your pattern before you cut out your fit muslin, then you're not going to have extra fabric at the top of your waistline in the front to deal with, and you'll also have more in the back. Now, the interesting thing about this adjustment I'm going to show you is it's not going to change the length of the overall crotch length, which I think is kind of cool, because a lot of times people will, shorten the front for a tilted waist, but they leave the back alone. And it could be that you had enough room, but then you brought it down in the front, you didn't lengthen it in the back, and then your back ends up being too short, your back rise. So I think this is a pretty cool adjustment, and it's really, really easy to do. So let's get started. I forgot to cut out my pieces, so let me just do that quick. And one thing I want to show you here is I am going to cut the zipper seam allowance right off. And the reason why I'm doing that is because sometimes if you have a zipper seam allowance, it can get in the way of your adjustment, and then it gets kind of fussed up while you're adjusting, and you have to fix it anyway. So if you're working with your front leg and you're going to be cutting through the zipper seam allowance, if you're worried you're going to be confused about what to do about that, just cut it off for now, and then I'll show you how to put it back on. So I'm literally just going to cut this out, and then I'm going to cut out my back leg as well. Now, you know, if you have joined my newsletter, you can get a free copy of these mini pattern pieces. So if you want to try this adjustment on a small scale pattern before you start working with your large scale pattern, just head over to my website and click on previous campaigns. If you didn't get my main newsletter, because they were in my main newsletter, you can get them there if you're already a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, just subscribe to my newsletter and you will get them automatically delivered to your inbox. So you'll have these if you want to practice, you know, while you're following along with me. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is let's just draw some guidelines. I'm going to draw in my grain line in the back because I know I need that. And I'm basically using my hem and the center of the hem just to get a grain line in here. All right, and I don't think I need it in the front, but I'm just going to draw it just so you guys can see what I'm doing. Let me just draw that in. Okay, so here are my two pieces, my front and back leg. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tape them together. Now, this is the first time I've actually taped pattern pieces together to make an adjustment, but you're going to see why I'm doing that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and just line up my legs so they're in position with each other in the vertical direction. So I'm lining up my hems with the grid on my board. So everything is lined up. And then I'm just going to stick a piece of tape between them like this. That's going to make doing what I'm going to show you how to do so much easier. Then what we're going to do is we're literally going to draw a horizontal line through the full hip area, and we want to make this line perpendicular to our grain line. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw a guideline there. Okay, so you can see I've basically made two big plus signs on my pattern pieces. The next step is I am going to figure out how much I need to lower my front rise. All right, so how do we tell how much we need to remove from the front if we have a forward tilting waistline? I think the easiest thing to do is look at your side view and maybe hold a ruler, you know, across your side as you're looking at your side view, so you can see how much your front rise is tipping down compared to your back rise, and then minus out a little bit. You don't want to get rid of the entire amount of extra rise because we don't really know 100% what it's going to be when we start fitting in a muslin. So let's say you look at your side view and you're holding something, you know, like basically like this. Let me just show you. So if you're looking at your side view and you hold your ruler like this at your waist, you can see how much lower it is in the front. You know, then maybe, you know, like let's say it dips down 2 inches. Well, maybe you decide I'm going to just take off 1.5 inches. I mean, you can take the full 2 inches if you want to, but it's always better to leave a little extra allowance just in case, because we can easily get rid of it later during the fitting process, but we can't add it without doing something super invasive to our muslin. I'm going to work with a 1/2 inch for this example, and that is huge for this tiny little, you know, legs that I'm working with. So you'll see that you can remove a significant amount, but remember, just be careful that you're not removing too much, because the goal of this is to basically get us in the ballpark here. So having decided how much we're going to get rid of, I am literally going to measure down my 1/2 inch, and I'm going to mark it, and now I'll start working in pink. So here is my 1/2 inch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a guide like this. So that's how much I want to remove at my center front. So here's what we're going to do. After you mark that, you're going to cut across so you have the top sections of your pattern pieces are separated. And I can see I did not do a good job of taping, so I'm going to tape my bottom section again here. Ideally, you want to, cut through your Scotch tape so it's holding here and it's holding here. That'll make life so much easier for the next step. So here's what we're going to do. We're literally going to pivot the front down until it's meeting the guideline that we drew, and I'm just going to tape it into position here. All right, let me just tape it into position. Okay. All right, so what happened over on our back? Look what happened. The back spread, and it spread in equal amount to what we shortened the front rise. So let's look and see what happened here. I put one of my pink Post-it notes underneath the back leg at the adjustment, and you can see if I highlight over here like this, let me just highlight this. I'm gonna color this in like this, and then I'm just gonna dash this. This means I removed it on the front leg. Okay. It opened up on the back leg, and I love this because we haven't changed the total measurement of the crotch, so it's less invasive to do it this way than just lowering the front and leaving the back alone. Because if you lower the front, you're shortening the overall the overall crotch length, and you don't know if you need to do that. The next step is to decide. Look at your side view and notice the curve of your butt from your side view. If you have a flat or average butt, you may want to straighten out the top of the center back seam a little bit, because you'll see what happens is when you reestablish the grain line, and you always reestablish the grain line underneath a wedge shape adjustment, you can see what's happening here is, oops, my grain line is moving towards the center back seam. And depending on your adjustment and the shape of your pattern, if it's getting too close and you don't have a full behind, you don't need a diagonal angle on your center back seam. So we don't want to do a adjustment for a tilted waist, but then also be changing something else we don't need. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that back. So basically, I'm going to extend my back waist, and I'm going to true up my center back seam by doing this. I'm connecting the center back below the adjustment, and I'm adding some back in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove a like amount from the side seam. And I'm just dashing in an approximate shape here. So this is going to go bye-bye. All right, so you can see what we have here is we have a pants pattern that is now adjusted for a forward tilting waistline. So you'll notice the slope of the waist front to back is going to angle down more to be more consistent with how your waistline sits. And we put back the center back seam so we're not creating more room inside our pants unless we need it. So the beauty of this is if you have a prominent behind, you can leave the center back seam angled, and then you'll be good to go. So that's how you do it for a forward tilted waist. I want to quickly just show you how to do a backward or a waist that tilts to the back, because it is a thing. It does happen. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to quickly draw in my grain line. Okay, so let me just quickly show you how to do the back. Again, I'm going to tape my legs together so they're lined up. Use a bigger piece of tape this time. All right, then I'm going to draw my guideline. And remember, we want the guideline to be perpendicular to these lines. Okay, then I'm going to decide how much length I need to add in the front. So again, you can look from your side view, put a level ruler across your side waist and notice how much it picks up. So in this case, let's say it's a 1/2 inch again. All right, so I'm just going to make a note of it. We have to plus a 1/2 inch. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my pieces off along my guideline. Oops. And then I'm going to put some paper here like this. This is in the front now, right? And I'm going to measure up that same 1/2 inch. I'll do it in pink. And I'm going to give myself a guideline like this. Now, you know what we're going to do, right? We're going to tilt the top of the legs backwards like this. And what's going to happen is we're actually going to be shortening the front rise, the back rise. So let's go ahead and tape that into place. All right, so here's what we're looking like now. Let me just tape my... All right, and I'm just going to mark what I overlapped here. So like right here. Okay, so here is what I got rid of. Okay, so you can notice what happens when we lengthen the front rise. We're actually tipping the front crotch or the center front seam away from center front. And what that does is it creates have a rectangular shape like I do. Let me show you what you're going to do here. And it's very similar to what we did in the back. You're literally going to just straighten this back out. Let me just put some tape here. Like this. So we'll straighten it back out. And it's very subtle in the front. It's not as big of a deal, but basically now your center front is straight. One last thing we need to do to the front, if you cut your zipper seam allowance, you have to put that back on. So basically you're just going to draw yourself a 3/8 inch seam allowance or whatever allowance you had along your center front edge. Now you may have to lengthen your zipper, because if you lengthened the rise, the zipper seam allowance will also have to be lengthened. So there is my zipper seam allowance, and I'll just cut that out so it looks nice. Okay. All right, so now let's just look at what's happening in the back. I'm going to put some pink paper here just so you can see that the angle of our center back is now pitching a little bit towards the center back compared to before the adjustment. And if you need the room back there, you probably should straighten that back out. I'm not going to need paper there. I just wanted to show you the angle clearly, because what we'll do is, we'll actually just, from below the adjustment, I'm just going to straighten that back out like this. Okay, so it's not tipping so far to the back, or like past center back. And then on the side, let me just cut these apart now. After you really secure your wedge adjustments, you can cut them apart at any time. It makes it easier to get into the side seam here. I can trim off the extra I added, or I can trim off the amount I needed to from my front. And then notice let me just cut this off here. I'm cutting off my center back. Okay, so this little piece I cut off right here, I'll just leave it here for now so we have it as a record. But basically, let me just tape this on. Notice that in addition to tipping the center back this way, we also created more of a hip curve over here. So because we took off some at center back, we can add it back in over here like this, and it'll fill in some of that hip curve, so our side seams stay in agreement shape-wise. All right, so we took off from center back, we added to the side seam. I'm just gonna trim that off so you can see. Okay, just a little bit. I probably trimmed off a little bit of what I added, so just be careful with that. But basically, here's what I trimmed off. There's what I added, trimmed off, added. So that's how you can true up your pattern pieces if you do not have a defined waist. Straighten your center front edge, and then also you can straighten out your center back as well, so you're not making other changes there. So in these body specific fit adjustment videos I'm going to be sharing with you over the next few weeks, I'm also going to be careful to tell you what else you're changing when you make an adjustment. So this video is just about tilted waist. We don't want to adjust the pattern for the shape of your butt or the shape of your waist or any of those things unless it agrees with the final result. So I showed you how to put those things back the way they were, so you're not creating another fitting problem by making the tilted waist adjustment. Because remember, at this point, we haven't made a muslin yet. So these are adjustments I invite you to use to customize your pattern to fit your shape before you work with a muslin. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Body Specific Pants Fitting Adjustments to do before you work with a fit muslin. I'm excited about tomorrow because we're going to be doing a few different things with the raglan sleeve shirt pattern. I got 3 different questions from subscribers about adjusting a raglan sleeve. We have how to keep it from pulling to the back, how to do a full bust adjustment, and then also, how to deal with it if you have too much fabric or if you have wrinkles under your arms. So I'm going to be showing you some strategies for all of those things tomorrow, live subscriber Q&A at 1 o'clock. And then on Friday, I'm super excited. I'm starting my bias series. I'm going to be developing a V-neck bias top that I will also be developing into a dress. I'm very excited about that project, so I hope to see you on Friday as well. It's going to be a fun week, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.